Hello and welcome to Florida Bass Adventures. Today's tip I'm going to give you is on how to improve your casting ability with your bait casting gear. Probably one of the most popular questions I get from clients is help with casting their bait caster. A lot of them have tried it, get a little frustrated with it, then they end up putting it down, going back to their spinning gear. So if you have a bait caster, this tip here hopefully will help you out a little bit. First thing I want to cover is your bait casting rod, which one I recommend. I'm sponsored by Dobbins Rods, and these here are just the absolute best rods I've had. As far as your quality of rod that you're using to cast a bait caster, there is quite a bit that you can apply to the quality of the rod. It does make a difference. If you're using too stiff a rod, that can cause you a bit of a problem. So I like to use a lot of medium rods, medium heavy for some of my heavier applications, but for the most part a lot of medium rods. Also rod butts. The longer rod butts really make a difference. The tip that I'm going to give you involves casting with two hands. The old bass fishing rods that we used to use, the casting rods, they were great in their time. They were what we called a trigger grip, where it was one handle and you would cast with one hand. In their time they were great. They really applied to fishing rivers, streams, smaller lakes, to where you really didn't have to cast that far. Today's evolution of bass fishing takes us to where we're casting on bigger bodies of water, where we really need to be covering a lot of water in our cast. So casting with two hands, that really makes a big difference. That's probably the biggest thing that you can do, is go from casting with one hand, especially if you do have that long rod handle, to casting with two hands. So the first tip, get the rod with a long rod handle. I use 7-foot rods. That's pretty much all I use all the time. I don't have any specific techniques where I'm using a 6 or 6.5. Everything that I'm needing to do, I can do with a 7-foot rod. Now if you're fishing, say like a small creek or river, let's say you live in Louisiana, maybe a 6.5-foot rod would be pretty good for you. But for me here in Orlando and the bigger lakes that I fish, these 7-foot rods are just absolutely perfect. And then the other tip that I want to give you is how you grip the reel. That's probably the biggest part of this tip. When we're casting with a bait caster, what keeps this spool from overspooling, which some people call a backlash, I prefer the term overspool, what keeps that from happening is your thumb on the spool. Believe it or not, your thumb isn't just for stopping the lure, it's for guiding this line to come off of this spool evenly. If your thumb isn't in contact in some way, that line is going to try to come off. A lot of times what happens is your lure is moving faster than your spool. And when that happens, your spool tries to catch up, but it can't. So it gets one big fast turn. And then the line, it can't come out of the spool fast enough, and then you start getting your overrun. And that's where the problems start. So if we can keep your thumb on the spool throughout the entire cast, that's going to change everything you're doing, going to make your success with a bait caster totally different. And this next information I'm about to give you, that's going to do that. I'm telling you, it's really easy. It's not necessarily the way I encourage you to cast all the time. If it works for you and you like it, continue to do it. But for right now, get used to having that thumb on the spool, and this will help. So what we're going to do, if you're casting with your right hand, and like me, I cast with the right hand and reel with my right hand, what you're going to do is you're going to palm that reel all the way around. Put 3 fingers in front of that trigger grip and get your thumb to where it actually rides across the spool. Now by doing this, when you cast all the way through, your thumb will stay on that spool the whole time. It won't come off. And you can lift it up a little bit and you can slide it around, but because it covers the whole spool, now you don't have to worry about that line overrunning. Now let's say you cast with your left hand and reel with your right hand. You're going to have a bit of an advantage, because that reel handle is not going to be in your hand. So when you palm the reel, now you just have absolute grip over the whole thing, and you can cast like this. It's very comfortable. The way I found this out was playing basketball. I actually sprained my joint on my thumb, and to do this, push the thumb bar and do that, was extremely painful to cast. So to overcome it, I started palming the whole spool, whole reel, and I was casting like this. Very simple tip, but it made it very easy for me to cast without having overspools. And then I started teaching clients how to do this, and it solved a lot of their problems. Really made it much better for them to cast. So that's my first tip, and I hope it helps you out with your bait casters, helps you enjoy it a little bit better, and you catch some more fish.